Hi everyone, welcome to Quilting from the Very Beginning with me, Lindsay B. This is our second video in our tutorial series that takes you all the way from a very beginning quilter to an advanced confident quilter. In the first video, I did refer to it as level 1, segment 1, but because each level encompasses an entire quilt, I've decided to change that for this video and going forward to Quilt 1, Lesson 2, and that is the format we'll be using for all the videos and the written tutorials. So in the last video, we talked about the 4-patch block. We talked about making either a lap or throw size, how many 5-inch squares you would need to make them, and then also roughly the finished size of the quilt. In this quilt, we're going to talk a little bit about fabric selection, the very basics. We're going to talk about different ways to purchase fabric, and then in the end we will talk about how much you need to buy. And we'll probably touch on a little bit of quilt math as well as we go here. In the next videos, the next couple, we'll talk about cutting, simple cuts, and then we'll get into the piecing after that. All right, so when we talk about fabric, there are two basic categories that I think of when we buy it, and those are precuts and yardage. So this is a precut. This is a charm pack. It's a bundle of 5-inch by 5-inch squares, 42 different squares of different fabrics that go together. They can have more than 42 or less than 42, but the standard is 42 5-inch squares. I have at discount stores, I've seen them 20 or 15, and I have bought them as many as 101 in one pack. So you do need to pay attention, but the standard is 42. They do cut these with a pinked edge, which is this zigzag edge here, and that's to keep it from fraying. Won't fray on you quite as much that way. Okay, so then the next pre-cut we're going to talk about are layer cakes. These are not as common. Oh, it's upside down, lovely. These are not as common as the charm packs or the jelly rolls, but they also have 42 pieces in them with the pinked edge, 10 inches by 10 inches. And they do have the 42 pieces, but you can see how much thicker that is than our 42 pieces of quilter's cotton. And that is because this is a quilter's grade flannel. Which brings me to my rant of the day. I don't consider myself a fabric snob in any way. I do consider myself really picky, but not necessarily, I'm not a believer that you have to buy super high expensive quality fabric, except when it comes to quilter's flannel. If you're going to use flannel in your quilt, which you absolutely can, even if you're using cotton, you can mix them up. But if you do that, please use quilter grade flannel. Do not use the Joann's flannel. That's the snuggle, the discount store flannels. They're thin, they're cheap. They will not last. They will not hold up to your quilter's cotton. Even if you buy a lower quality quilter cotton, they won't hold up. They'll rip, they fray easily, and they're very difficult to work with. If you're making a rag quilt, that can be a really good choice. Or if you're making a flannel pair of pajamas, you can do it that way. But for quilting and piecing, please do yourself a favor. You're spending so much time and money. Make sure you have a good quality quilter's grade flannel. And if you can't afford to buy fancy flannel, then just stick to a medium grade cotton and you'll be just fine. All right, rant over. The next way to buy a pre-cut is a jelly roll, 2.5 inches by 40 inches for each strip, all bundled together, pinked edges, and that is what we'll be using for the bonus quilt on the back of the quilt. There's also a fat quarter. This is actually called a crafter's quarter, where I bought it at my craft store. And there are all sorts of different names, and that goes for all of these pre-cuts. But it's sort of like if you need a Kleenex, you're not going to say, can you hand me a tissue? You're going to say, do you have a Kleenex? And it's the same thing here. So if you needed a 5 by 5-inch square pack, you're just going to say charm pack. You're going to say jelly roll. You're going to say layer cake. And the people at the store will know exactly what you're asking, and they'll point you in the right direction. You can also search by those terms online. Now this one happens to be 18 by 20 inches. They do sometimes come in bundles. You can buy a fat quarter bundle. They do look a little bit different depending on where you buy them. This is one I bought at Joann's. You can see it's not a high quality fabric. You can see through it that it's bleeding through from the other side. Hopefully you can see that. So it's just not going to show up and be nice for you. It's also not very soft. And they did call this one a fabric quarter. It's 18 by 21 inches, but this is a fat quarter. All right, so those are our pre-cuts. Now let's talk about yardage. Where'd my chalkboard go? This is another segment of our one-hit wonder here. I mean, if you're looking for like an independent film quality type of YouTube tutorial, you're definitely in the wrong place. Because much like a quilt, a finished tutorial is better than a perfect tutorial. Okay, yardage. Yardage will generally come for a quilter's cotton in what is commonly referred to as a 45 wide, which is confusing because it's almost never 45 wide. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a 45 wide. I've seen 44 wides. A lot of fabric you buy at Joann's is 44 inches. 42 wide, many designer fabrics are 42 inches wide, and some are even 40 inches wide. Don't worry about it. Usually they will tell you in a pattern, if you're using a modern quilting pattern, to use a 44 or a 42. But in general, as long as your fabric is at least 42 inches wide, you're going to have enough fabric. There are exceptions. That's where quilt math comes into play. But as a general rule, you should be okay with a 42 inch. Now when we buy yardage, we buy it in lengths. There's two basic categories of lengths here. We have what I refer to as quarter yard lengths, 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. You can also buy them by the third, 1/3, or 2/3, and then of course 1 yard, or however many yards you want. Some of the fabric stores will actually let you buy them by the inch. Not all of them, not even most of them, but some of them will, especially like the discount fabric stores that are using computers instead of using a notebook where they write it down for you, a receipt. But if they do allow you to do it by the inch, it becomes important. For example, for our 5-inch squares, 1/8 of a yard is only 4.5 inches wide. So that's not wide enough for our 5-inch squares. A 1/4 yard is 9 inches, which is not quite enough for 2 strips. So you're going to have a lot of waste there. So even with, straightening. So if you wanted to make a 5-inch square, a 7-inch strip will work much better for you. Now 1/3 of a yard is a really good way to go as well because it's 12 inches, which gives you just 1 inch on either side for wiggle room, and then 2 full strips of 5-inch squares. And we'll talk more about that later. But that's just a very beginning quilt math, I guess, sneak peek. Just a little bit of familiarity there. All right, when we buy fabric by the yard, it's usually going to be on the bolt. Sometimes it's a flat fold, but we're going to talk about a bolt today. You're going to see these bolts stacked up against the walls and on shelves in your fabric store. They can be organized by price, they can be organized by fabric quality, they can be organized by color, different quilting lines, all sorts of different ways. You can't take this bolt up to the register and purchase it. You do have to go to the cutting counter and get it cut. And what they're going to do is they're going to ask you how much you want. So they're going to unwind it for you. You're going to say you want 1/2 yard or however much it is you want, and then they will measure it for you and cut it off. They'll give you the cut piece along with a cutting slip, and then you'll take that to the register to purchase your fabric. Now on the end of the bolt there's a lot of important information. Let's see if I can get this to work here. Focus. This is not quilter's cotton, by the way. This is a felt I used for my design board because it's a 36-inch wide, so it could fit in my camera. But anyway, right here it's going to tell you wool blend felt in this case. It may tell you holiday. It may say a quilter's, you know, design or line here. But right here is important. It says 36 inches. That's going to tell you how wide the fabric is. It's going to tell you where it's made, a description sometimes of the fabric, what the fabric is made of, and how to care for it. It will tell you how many yards are about on a full brand new bolt, and then the price you're going to pay per yard. This is not the price you would pay for a whole bolt. This is the price per yard that I would pay for. Well, let's be honest, I would have used a coupon. But the point being, it's $9.99 per yard. So if I want a quarter yard of this, I would be paying $2.50 for that piece. Okay. So now that we kind of have talked about different ways that you can purchase fabric, focus, focus, focus. I'm going to talk about what kind of fabric to buy. The easiest way to decide, or the easiest way to get fabrics that are going to look really good in your quilt, is to go with a charm pack. There is a reason we chose 5" by 5" for our first quilt. This is an excellent way to go. They're all going to match. They're going to go together. You don't need to worry about any more cutting. Okay, and you could also use a layer cake. You would just cut it into 4 pieces. We'll talk about that during cutting. So that's the easy peasy way. Simple dimple way is to buy it according to a fabric line. This fabric happens to be Free Spirit is the maker of it. It's mod cloth by So Kind of Wonderful. So the advantage to this is they've already done all the design work for you. In a local fabric store, these are all going to be, usually these are categorized together, they're stacked together, so they're easy to find, and you can just choose the ones that you want. So that's another really easy and nice way to get a good result for your fabric that doesn't require much thinking. Now you can also do a little bit of a creative stretch and choose your own fabrics. Over the next few quilts, I will give you lots of scenarios, but for today, we're going to talk about if I want to make a quilt for my daughter with a licensed character. So in this case, my daughter loves Funshine Bear from the Care Bears. So I go to Joann's. If you want licensed fabric, a discount fabric store or online is an excellent way to go because the quilt shops, the local quilt shops, will probably not have any licensed fabrics. Now usually you're going to need to buy these by the yard. Sometimes they will have pre-cuts, but generally speaking, they're all going to be together in the novelty print, the licensed print section, and they'll all kind of be together. So I found one with Funshine Bear. I found one with more Care Bears and a nice rainbow. And then I found this striped one that has little Care Bears on it. I just thought these were so, 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 so cute. But I didn't want it just to be Care Bears. I wanted it to have maybe a rainbow in there. So I took all of these fabrics over to the novelty fabric section of Joann's. And I started looking at rainbows and things like that. One of the rainbows I saw was this one, which is a lovely rainbow. But as soon as you put this here, this is going to be all you see. Can you see how bright it is compared to these fabrics? Although it does match, it just draws too much attention to itself when the focus is this very light Funshine Bear. So I'm going to not get that one, even though I think it's cute. Just because it's cute doesn't mean it's going to work. But I did find this rainbow that you can see is not as bright. It kind of goes with this. It's not as wide, so it does give it a little bit of interest, and it does tie these fabrics together. In addition to those, I'm also going to be using solid charm packs. So that was what I decided to do for my daughter's 4-patch quilt. And again, online is another really good way to find licensed fabric. And we'll talk about other ways to plan fabric as we go along. Okay, so how much fabric do you need to buy? So, as we talked about, the easiest way to purchase your fabric is with the charm pack. So if you're making a throw size quilt, we know that you need 196 5-inch squares. That would be the bare minimum. I highly recommend that you don't buy the minimum, but that you get a few extras so that you can make a sample quilt, or excuse me, sample squares. You can practice your piecing, and then any extra squares you use, you can just make your own charm pack stack, which I'll show you sometime. So if you are making a charm pack, if you're using charm packs, and there are 42 squares per charm pack, the standard, make sure you look, you will need 5 packs, and that will give you 210 squares. You can see a layer cake, 2 packs of those will give you 336, which is way too many, maybe too many, and maybe you don't even want to save that many extra. So you could consider doing a combo with 1 layer cake and 1 charm pack, which gets you back to that 210. And then fat quarters, it would require 17 fat quarters for 204 squares. So that's for the throw size, and I'll let you guys take a screenshot of this. It will be in the written tutorial as well, but I just want to make sure you have this to take with you to the fabric store. Here's the same idea for the lap size. I need to get a picture if you want that. If you decide to go with yardage, I have broken this down according to how many colors you find in the fabric store, which is why you'd want to bring this with you. So if you find 2 colors that you love and you just want to do a checkerboard, this is going to show you 2 colors, 2 2/3 yard. That means of each of your 2 colors will give you 204 squares. Now if you find 9, these are all even numbers, but if you find 9 colors that you love, make sure you round up to 10 colors yardage. So you're going to get a half a yard of each of your 9. Oh, I'm sorry, I did that backwards. Make sure that you go down. See, it's a good thing that this is highly edited. So if you have 9, you're going to want to go down to 8 because you're going to buy more yardage and you'll just have extra. But if you do 10 and you do a half a yard instead of a 3/4 of a yard, then you're going to end up with not enough fabric. And then if you do 16 or more colors, you'll want a 7-inch strip or a 1/4 yard. If you need 8 colors, a 3/4 yard will give you 245. So you may be better off, if you can, to get 28 inches. And here is the minimum squares for our lap size. Okay. So I did want to show you one more thing that I forgot to talk about with our yardage, and that is the difference between a 1/4 yard of fabric and a fat quarter. They sound like they're the same, and they do have the same square inches in them, but they have very, very different ramifications to them. If I buy a 1/4 yard of fabric from yardage, this is going to be 9 inches in length, and it's going to be 42 inches long. Now this is going to be folded in half, so this is 21 inches from end to end here, plus selvage and all that, but we'll get into it. A fat quarter, how they make those is they take a yard of fabric, so 36 inches long, and then they make it, the width is 42 inches long, the same as here. But what they do is they cut this into half this way and half this way. So then they have what's called a fat quarter. 1, 2, 3, 4. One of these is also a 1/4 yard. So if we're making 5-inch squares, and this is just generically speaking without straightening or anything, if we cut off 5 inches of our 9 inches, we have 4 inches left that are not wide enough for our squares. So we only get 8 5-inch squares here for our 1/4 yard. With this one, we can actually get 1, 2, 3, 4, plus some spare, 1, 2, 3, plus a little bit of scrap here. We get 12 5-inch squares from a fat quarter, just because it's wider and taller instead of just long. So that may make more sense later. We're going to talk more about quilt math and how to come up with your own. And I know some of you are saying, why don't you just tell me how much yardage I need? Well, I think it's important if you want to be an advanced and a good quilter to know the basics of how to design a quilt and how to figure out how much yardage you need on your own. There are definitely apps that can help you with this, but I think, again, you're not always maybe going to have the app with you. It's just a good idea to know how to do it. Okay, well, I think that covers everything for today. There is a written tutorial of this that will have those charts in it for you, as well as some other information. I hope you guys are having as much fun watching these as I am making them. If you are, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I do love making them, but they are a little bit of work, so help me out with that subscribe button. Other than that, we'll see you next time where we will do simple cutting. Have a great day, everyone.